All right. So welcome everybody to our Friday Tech Office Hours, our Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Today, or just for those who have never joined a call like this before, I just wanted to give a very quick overview about what office hours are. And office hours are a live forum for transitioning military veterans, veterans and military spouses and allies to ask questions and get help while on their Salesforce journey. So if you need help on a Trailhead module, you would like feedback on a Salesforce related project or challenge at work, or if you just have a question related to Salesforce features or functionality, these office hours are for you. Now, our office hours come in three distinct flavors. We have our open Q&A, which is kind of our standard model for office hours, where if you have questions, you have issues that you're looking for help on, it's just an open forum. So we kind of just open it up for questions, and we'll do deep dives. If you have a question, we'll kind of build a flow in real time, or we'll try to have a discussion, bounce questions around the room. Our second type of office hours are workshops, where these are kind of pre-built exercises that we're going to go through, where we're all working on them together. So we all get a Trailhead playground set up. And we kind of walk through the steps together of, putting together some kind of, functionality. Our last workshop was around omnichannel, and we had Salesforce MVP Brendan walk us through, how to set up omnichannel. Our next workshop is actually going to be next week with another Salesforce MVP, Steve Mollis, who's going to be walking us through some reporting and formula type stuff. And then our final type of office hours are our ecosystem exposure. And that's actually what we're going to be focusing on here today. So by ecosystem exposure, what we're talking about is where, as a new admin or a developer, as you're getting started, as you go to work for that first company, you get that first sales role. It's good that as use cases come up, that you have kind of an idea of what the available apps that are available on the App Exchange. So what we do is we try to bring in some of those, more relevant apps that are available and have them kind of speak to us, give us a quick presentation about what they can do, the use cases that they can help address, and basically just give you some exposure to what their product can offer for you and for your companies that you're working for. So with that, I wanted to introduce Matt Kennedy. He is the Senior Director of Partner Enablement at OwnBackup. And Matt, if it's okay with you, I will stop sharing. You can share, and then maybe you can just do a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. This is a great group. I'm really appreciative of getting the opportunity to speak with everybody today. I'll share my screen. I want to keep this interactive. Let me know what you want to see. This is, I have a bunch of solutions, but I think what's interesting is, God, Bill, I think I met you, it's got to be going on 6-7 years ago. And I think for anybody that's on this call, if you're new to Salesforce, if you're just kind of learning, I saw one of the questions in the chat already is like, how do you get started? For me, it was all about the user groups. I mean, a group like this is phenomenal that you can get together and connect with people. I was in a situation where I was working for a company and kind of struggling and looking for a change. And I'd gone to a Salesforce World Tour event. It was actually down in Philadelphia, probably about 7-8 years ago. And it was the only time I think that they've had a world tour in Philadelphia. But I'd gone to that event and everybody there was just doing phenomenal. And it's just like, I looked at it and said, I need to change. I need to get into this ecosystem. And I studied, I got my admin certification. I went to every user group I could. Living in New Jersey, lots of groups in the Philly area, in the New Jersey area, in the New York area. And I just wanted to learn and get as much as I could to get into this ecosystem. And through that process, met a lot of people like Bill, and a lot of people that just kind of gave me advice, helped me on my career, and wound up landing with a company called OwnBackup. So my background is I have a developer background, but more in client server worlds, Microsoft.NET and C# and things like that. And it didn't necessarily translate over to a developer in cloud space in working with Salesforce, but I did have technical knowledge, and I guess I talk a lot. So I was able to combine those two things and get into a role that you'll see with a lot of ISV partners, a lot of application partners, called a sales engineer. So basically the ability to talk technical and demonstrate products and kind of show how our solutions can help, different companies. And with that role, I was then able to, with OwnBackup, as OwnBackup has grown, I was able to join our alliances team. So now I'm the technical resource working with partners like Salesforce, other application vendors, and consulting partners. So I'll stop there. I'm willing to go in and show you any of our solutions, but I'm also willing to just answer questions about the Salesforce ecosystem. Maybe if you're struggling and trying to figure out, which path you want to go down, I'm happy to share any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, Matt, I actually have a question I can kind of kick things off with.
Yeah.
If you had to kind of start over today and do it all over again, what certification path would you choose from the beginning?
That's a good question, Bill. And I think for anybody, I think admin is step one, because I've seen developers that kind of go down that development path without really knowing the point and click portion of Salesforce. And they're looking to, develop something that maybe already exists in the platform. So I think everybody really should start at that admin role and then figure out where you want to go from there. Do you want to go advanced admin? Do you want to go for platform app builder? Do you want to go for the development path? Or do you want to start focusing on a particular cloud? Are you really thinking, I want to work in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud or Marketing Cloud and start to build out? But to me, and I don't know if you agree, Bill, I think admin's got to be a foundation for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm usually partial to platform app builder too, just because I feel like that's the more fun functionality for me.
Yeah. It's definitely something you can build. I think if you get admin, you can get platform app builder relatively easy and have 2 certs under your belt. And then kind of figure out from there which direction you want to go. But again, I do presentations all day, and I love when there's interaction. If you want to just hear me talk for the next 50 minutes, I can do that. But I would love to just, come off mute. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll give you an overview of our solutions and just kind of tell you why we exist. It's kind of interesting. I was fortunate enough to join OwnBackup. Like I said, I was going through this career journey, and I landed with OwnBackup 5 years ago with 20 employees. I kind of took a risk and said, where's this company going? But I saw the potential for it. In the last 5 years, we've grown to almost 600 employees now. So just unbelievable growth. I mean, we're hiring 5 to 10 people every week. And, if anybody's interested, I'll throw this in the chat. There's tons of careers. A lot of them are local to New Jersey, but we're hiring all over the country too. So if you're interested, if you see something on that careers page, whether it's, people without a lot of experience are joining our companies as SDRs, which is sales development representatives. They're going out, they're calling on prospects, kind of generating interest in our applications. If you're in a sales role already, we're looking, for experienced account executives. We also have a lot of people on the customer success side. So if you enjoy just working with customers that have our solutions and supporting them, kind of, nurturing the relationship. We also have a lot of people in our support team. So people that are, answering technical questions on our solutions. And then, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities for developers. There's a lot of opportunities for sales engineers. If you have that technical experience and want to be able to do product demonstrations. And we have a lot of opportunities in marketing as well. So like I said, any questions, if you look at that page and you see something that looks interesting to you, feel free to reach out to me or feel free to, apply yourself. We are growing really fast. So always looking for new people.
No, that's awesome, Matt. Thank you for that. Well, any initial questions? Otherwise, there's 2 key things I was hoping I might be able to ask, as far as OwnBackup functionality, but any questions, if anybody wants to come off mute or put it into the chat?
Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
So I think I know the answer, but I would love to kind of get your take on it. I've been in Salesforce for about 5 years now,
Okay.
and I still kind of gloss over every time I hear the word metadata.
Okay.
Because I still don't think I understand it 100% fully. I understand the concept, but I was hoping maybe you could add a little more light to that for me.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's funny. I think when people think of our solution, so I'll give you a quick overview of OwnBackup. When we started, and I think when people think of OwnBackup, they think of data, right? It's, you got important information in your system, you know, accounts, leads, contacts, opportunities, all that information. You know, if you lost that, it's really going to be damaging to your organization. So when we talk about Salesforce, you know, it's not that Salesforce is going to lose anything. Salesforce is a phenomenal platform with availability and uptime. If a server ever went down, they have redundancy, they have failover, they'll get you back up and running. So as a Salesforce customer, you have access to your data 99.999% of the time. But what if you made changes? What if you go in and you're using data loader, using Workbench, maybe you do a big query or an update, and you corrupt some data? How do you roll back to what it was previously? So that's what OwnBackup's kind of known for. The question you're asking is not just that we back up data, we also back up the metadata. So what is metadata? When you think of it, it's data about data, right? Very confusing concept to kind of get your hands around. If you look at when we back up, every day you'll get a complete backup of your metadata. So what is that? If I open up a metadata backup, that's going to show me all these configuration files. So think of metadata as all the changes you make to your Salesforce org, all the customizations, right? When you think about every company that uses Salesforce wants to customize it for their particular operation. So they're writing Apex code. They're adding new triggers. They're writing, you know, different page layouts, custom objects, email templates, reports, dashboards, profiles, permission sets, workflows. So anything that you're going in, either through point and click or through development, and you're customizing your particular Salesforce instance, all of that is metadata. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's kind of what I thought it was. It was the information surrounding the data.
Exactly.
And what supports the data. So that definitely,
so what's
I feel much
interesting
better.
about, yeah, no, what's interesting about that is, you know, that needs to be protected just as much. Imagine that you created all these different profiles and permission sets, and somebody accidentally deleted one of them. Like, what was in that? You know, what did I give access to? If I create sharing rules, there's so much work that goes into configuring that what we do is we give you the option to then compare any of these backup points in time. You know, so from today to yesterday, today to last week, today to a month ago. You know, if somebody came up to you, you've been working in Salesforce now for 5 years, and somebody came up to you today and said, can you tell me what changed in our configuration files in, you know, it's, here we are halfway through October. Can you tell me what's changed in our org in the last 2 weeks or the last month? With our system, you can go in and run a metadata compare over any period of time. So what you'll see here is that I can actually go in and say, let me see what my configuration files look like at the beginning of the month. And let's see what's changed over the last 2 weeks. So here's my configuration at the start, and here it is today. I've removed 2 applications. I've changed 18. I've added 3 others. I've made a lot of changes to my Apex code. I've made a lot of changes to my page layouts. And if you see something as simple here as, hey, one workflow was modified, what was that change? You can click on this link and it's going to show you, here's what the workflow looked like before, and here's what it looks like now. So I only made this one change, this one flag from false to true, but that could be impacting different processes throughout the system. And what you can do here is, this is a partial view, which is only the change, but you can get this full view, which is a complete side-by-side XML comparison. So you can easily see what's changed over time within your org. So I think it's one of those things where if you have multiple admins, multiple developers, your configuration files are changing constantly, and you want to be able to track this. Now, a lot of people will use source control tools. I'm sure, Bill, you're using like a Git or a GitHub to manage all your configuration changes, which is phenomenal. And we're not a release management or a deployment tool, but what we're giving you that's a little bit different is a full backup every single day of your configuration files. So you can.
Oh, you just muted yourself.
I don't know how that happened. I didn't
No,
touch
that was all me. I'm going to take blame for that.
Oh,
So
I was
I'm
gonna
in the
say,
waiting room, and
I
of
didn't
course,
do it.
right as I click, it re-rendered and moved things up. So my apologies on that.
Oh, no problem, no problem at all. Yeah, so I think it's just important. Like I said, we're not replacing what you would get with a GitHub, which is really source control repository that multiple developers can work in and check out code and check in code and make it part of deployments. But we're giving you that full daily backup, so you can compare one org to another. You can compare production versus a sandbox, or the same org over any point in time. So I hope that helps, Dominique. I think it's a great question, because I think a lot of people do get confused with the difference between data and metadata. So I'll open it up for anything else or any follow-up on that. Yeah.
No, that was awesome. Thank you. And it does look very familiar. I use Tortoise Git and Bitbucket. So to see it broken out like that, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, a great tool, like, a tool like Bitbucket is phenomenal for tracking, changes over time. But what we see sometimes is customers have, internal resources, admins, developers, maybe they have outside consultants working on projects. And it's hard to kind of track all those changes that are coming from different places. But by having these full daily snapshots, we get the accumulated, work of all those different people and be able to identify what's changed. So I guess,
I think,
go ahead, Dominic.
Oh, sorry. I think, so the company I'm going to is Medtronic, and they have a whole page on their website about OwnBackup. So,
oh, really? Oh, interesting. That's great.
This is funny that it also coincides with that. So
I appreciate that. Phil, I was just going to ask for your opinion. I mean, you're a developer first. I mean, you use all those source control tools. What is your advice to people when they're first learning about the configuration files within Salesforce?
Yeah, I think honestly the tools I think have two very different use cases that they address, right? So as a developer and as the sole developer of our application, I have all the control. So I know exactly what's being changed. We check it into our source code. We have to upload, manage packages, things like that. But it is very, there's not a lot of hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. Where I really see the value here is that, like I said, if you have, multiple admins, multiple developers, potentially, different environments or sandboxes where people are trying to make changes, like dev environments or UAT sandbox, where you still have to try to keep track of those changes and audit those changes. This is pretty awesome. One clarifying question. I think you touched on this, but this allows you to do the comparison, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to roll back a change or make the change directly from here. You would have to take this metadata into another tool to actually deploy the change.
It's a good point. So when you see our restore tools, we do have a metadata restore, but it's kind of limited. It's really, it's not meant to roll back wholesale changes. But if you were to go in here and say, from an admin perspective, we kind of focused on what we think are the key configuration files. So what you'll see here is we have, I think it's about 11 or 13 files, 2, 4, and 11 or 10 different, so if somebody changed a report that broke a dashboard and you wanted to roll back a report, you could easily do that. If you wanted to, change a page layout or permission set, we back all that up and we can restore that. If it's an object that's not listed here, you do have the full capability to go into the metadata backup and basically go to any snapshot from any point in time and say, I want to go back to what it was yesterday. I can click on that link, and what I'm going to get is this list that I showed you earlier with all these objects. And if you wanted to download the Apex code at that point in time, what you would get here is an apex class.zip, which would contain all 234 Apex classes. You can open up that zip file, and basically what you would see is here's all the code, here's all the classes that you have within this org with a package XML. So to your point, Bill, you could manually deploy any one of these classes, or you can wholesale upload all of it, but you would use another tool. You'd use like an Eclipse or an Ant to actually deploy this code.
Yeah. Nice.
I think what's interesting is on that same vein, you're talking about different sandboxes, UAT environments. A lot of people appreciate our sandbox seeding tool because it's the ability to populate a sandbox with a subset of data. So it's usually a challenge for a lot of people. If you think about you're working in a Salesforce environment and your admin says, here's a developer sandbox, here's a developer pro. Awesome, you got the sandbox you can work with now. They spin it off of production. It has all the current configuration files, the latest metadata. And now you're challenged with populating it. How do you get data into a sandbox? And the typical answer we hear is, you're taking CSV files, you're using data loader, you're uploading that information. But it's very tedious, it's time consuming, and you got to do it object by object. So what our sandbox seeding tool allows you to do is go in and build what we call templates, where you can say, I want to go in and build an object model. So if I have a simple example here of accounts, contacts, and opportunities, I can select several root objects like accounts and leads. And then, for those account records, I really want to have the associated contacts, the associated opportunities on the contacts. I'd love to get the case data on the opportunities. I want the task records. So you can start to build this out, and if you're working with, if you're working with nonprofit success pack, if you're working with the higher ed data model, those are pretty complex object models. And think about trying to do this manually with data loader. You're gonna have to upload some accounts. And then if you upload the contacts, how do you relate those contacts back to the proper accounts? When you're importing them into a new sandbox, the ID values are all changing. So you wind up using Excel and VLOOKUPs, and you're trying to put this data together, and it's very complex and just prone to error, and it takes a lot of time. So what we've done is really kind of automated this process for people where they can save these templates and then use them over and over again. And the biggest challenge is those sandboxes are limited in their capacity. If you look at like a developer sandbox, I think there's a way to get this up, is 200 meg. Dev Pro is 1 gig, and then a partial is 5 gig. So if your production org is bigger than that, which most production orgs are, we work with, multiple gigs, multiple terabytes in some situations with different customers, you can't fit all of that production data into a smaller sandbox. So what we allow you to do here is do filtering. You can go in and say, just give me 200 records of the oldest, the newest, or this feature is great, sample for coverage. Give me 2 records of every account type. I got 10 different account types. I'm going to get 20 records in that sandbox that is going to give me a sampling of what's in my production org. So think about it from a developer perspective. Now you're testing in a sandbox that has a really good representation of what's in your production org, but a much smaller set of data. So now you can test it out, and then you can go through your deployment process, bring it up to a UAT, a staging environment before it goes to production, but your testing is going to be much better, and you're not wasting time with populating the sandbox with dummy data. It's a real representation of what's in production. And the last feature people really appreciate is we have this anonymization feature where we can mask any sensitive information. So it makes our clients feel much more comfortable if they have to give that sandbox to an outside developer or a consultant, that any sensitive data like name, address, email, phone number, social security, credit card data is all masked and changed. So it is pure test data. We see a lot of people use it for testing, but also for training purposes.
So Matt, clarifying question here. So this is, if I create a brand new developer copy sandbox, we can use this tool to seed the data. Is there a concept that, after we're done with that data that's been seeded, we delete it, we've changed it, can we reload data then into that same exact sandbox, or do we have to refresh the sandbox first?
No, it's a good point, Bill. A lot of people will refresh if there's been changes to the production org and they want the latest configurations. But we do have several seeding options where you can use this template over and over again to, maybe you have 5 developers and you want to populate 5 different sandboxes, you can do that. But we have different seeding methods where an incremental says, hey, I already have some data in that sandbox. I populated my accounts, contacts. I want to put some other data in there. I want to add to what's already in that sandbox. Upsert says, I have data in there, but it's getting a little stale. I want to refresh it, with newer data from the production org. Or to your point, clean and insert. Let's wipe it, and let's put in new data. So you really have several different options to either seed from scratch or, seed and refresh what's already in there.
Very cool.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
A lot of this kind of stuff is still quite over my head, but if you were talking to a company that was just starting to use Salesforce, what would you tell them about your product compared to the out-of-the-box backup that comes with Salesforce?
So it's interesting. I like I said, I think Salesforce being a cloud solution, a lot of people are like, why do I need to back up my data, right? It's all secure, it's in the cloud. But like I said, you're really protecting yourself from the daily changes that happen within your environment. So out of the box, what Salesforce offers is something called the Salesforce Weekly Exports. So it's a good solution. It's at least giving you a backup. A couple limitations. One, it's a very manual process. You got to go in, you got to schedule that weekly export to run once a week. And what it does is it runs in the background and it creates either a large zip file or multiple zip files with a CSV for every single object. So if you think about it, if you look at a backup that I have here, and I go in and I look at a single backup that I have, this is what the weekly export would look like. It would be a CSV file for every one of these objects. So let's say I take my accounts and I download the accounts. What I'm going to get is 163 records, in a CSV file that I can open with Excel, right? So it's going to have, one column for every field, right? My account name, my ID, all this information is going to be scrolled out. Now, this gets a little unwieldy, right? You're going to have one of these objects or CSV files for every single object that you have in your org. And you're going to have to then download that. So it's up to you. Salesforce will run this weekly export in the background. They'll create this zip or a series of zip files for you. You need to download it. And then once you download it, what do you do with it, right? You've just taken all this data out of your secure Salesforce environment. And now people have access, if they got a hold of these zip files or these CSVs, they have access to all your underlying data. So best practice is you download it once a week, you put it out to a secure server somewhere, but you don't want to override last week's files. So now you got to create folders and try to track all those changes. And then if something went wrong, it's up to you now to use those CSV files and data loader to try to bring that data back into the Salesforce environment. So the difference being that we're going to do this automatically for you. And we're going to do it not just once a week, but every night. You can be confident that you're getting a full backup of all your objects. And then just like I was showing you with the metadata compare, you can now compare any different points in time with your data. So if something were to go wrong, if you had an integration, you can do on-demand backups. You can then run a comparison and say, hey, something went wrong. I want to see what the data looked like before this happened. And if I had some account records that got deleted, let's say that a user did account merge. They said, oh, these accounts look like duplicates. I'm going to take these 3 accounts and merge them into one. Well, if they realized afterwards that was a mistake, how do you unmerge those records? And if you think about deleting a parent record, it's not just the account that gets deleted. You're going to see this cascade effect of all those related objects that get deleted along with it. And trying to put that together is really the hard part. It's like pulling a thread. You're trying to put that back together. It's very difficult. We're going to automate that for you so that when you restore here, it's going to look like, I have one. Got a lot of different stuff in this org, sorry. It's going to look like this, where it's not just the parent object, but it's all that related information below that's going to get put back together. So does that help, Megan? It's kind of the out of the box is manual, and it's individual files that you're then responsible for kind of putting back together if you ever had to.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Great question. Thank you. Well, like I said,
Good morning.
I can talk forever. I'll keep going unless somebody has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. My name is Andrew Reiter. I'm new to the Salesforce environment. I'm working on getting my project management certificate through PMI. My question is related to project management and Salesforce. Are there any positions in Salesforce, in the Salesforce ecosystem for project management?
Absolutely. I hear it all the time because you think about, Bill and I were talking earlier about development, right? But where does that start? It starts with analysis. It starts with thinking about, what projects do we have working on? So we hear it all the time at our customers with, anything that's, you think about Salesforce for a lot of companies, right? It's kind of the center, it's customer relation management, but there's a lot of data that can potentially come in from other systems, right? If you're linking up with your accounting system, your billing, your collections, if you're linking up, with your marketing, you're bringing in external data from whatever lead systems you're using. We hear a lot of integrations with like HubSpot and things like that. So all of those are projects and they all need to be managed. So absolutely, we hear project management around Salesforce, with consulting partners as well. So yeah, it's great. If you can learn as much as you can about Salesforce and then marry it with a project management, there's plenty of opportunities for you. Absolutely.
I have another question, a follow-up from my first question.
Sure.
I am new to IT. The only IT I know is how to hook up a printer to my network at my house.
Right, it's hardware. Yeah.
Is Salesforce a good way to break into the IT ecosystem?
Absolutely. I think, we were talking about this a little bit in the beginning, is just that there's so many opportunities. I think that, there's more positions than there are people right now in the Salesforce ecosystem. And I think if you can embrace Trailhead and learn as much as you can, I was talking about it earlier, go to user groups, go to events like this, share knowledge. That's going to open doors for you. I really think it's about relationships. And just, being able to leverage the knowledge that you accumulate, figure out what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, build up that experience, and then find out where there's opportunities for you. There's so many different paths you can take with Salesforce knowledge. Like I said, sales, marketing, support, customer success, there's so many different ways you can go with it. If you look at the careers page on Salesforce, there's so many opportunities. And there's a lot of different profiles, there's a lot of different things. I think the path that I wound up going down, the sales engineer path wasn't really promoted. I didn't see a lot about it, but as I read and learned more about it, I said that seemed like a good fit for me.
And just to add one thing to that, I think, Andrew, the one thing that I think that makes the Salesforce ecosystem kind of unique is that, from day one, you can go to, developer.salesforce.com and spin up a complete 100% functional copy of Salesforce that you can use to learn and, build, as you're going through Trailhead. Same thing for Trailhead Playgrounds. And not only that, but I think the knowledge in the Salesforce ecosystem is a lot more accessible compared to some other platforms as well. I mean, if you look at some of the documentation from, let's just say, Dynamics versus, the Salesforce platform, you can kind of see just in the writing, even how they're building these trailheads, it's very accessible. The language they use, the way they kind of walk you through all the steps, the check on learning, the practical exercises you're going to get through Salesforce. So, as far as, a technology platform to kind of, just get into the space, from starting with, hooking up the printer, as you mentioned, I think Salesforce is a great option for that, just because they make it so accessible. And not only that, but just the community itself. I think that's the other kind of big differentiator with Salesforce is just, how connected everybody is, the collaboration, success, the salesforce.com, where you can go on and chat with people, forums like this. So there's just a lot of opportunity there to get help and, feedback from other folks as well.
Yeah, I experienced that the other day. I was having difficulty uploading the Dreamhouse installation package, and I put out a request for help, and within an hour I got somebody from Japan of all places to help me, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So Yeah, I did my first point and click edition. I don't remember what the task was. It had to do with pre-qualification, I think. Yeah, and it was quite easy. So I was quite proud of myself.
Well, it's
Even though
nice. Yeah,
it's
you
Nice.
get those successes and you can
Pretty
build on
simple.
that. I think it's Trailhead is designed that way, where it's very bite-sized chunks of information and you can go at your own pace. I'll tell you a couple of things I thought were interesting was I spent a ton of time at the user groups. I see Pinaki's joined. Pinaki and I go way back to the early days of the user groups. And I loved it so much. I got so much out of the user groups. I became a user group leader. So now I lead the Hamilton, New Jersey user group with another coworker of mine and another company. And just trying to give back. I mean, Bill's doing a great job here in putting this together. And I think anybody that's gone through the ecosystem has benefited from it. And then there's the opportunity to give back. So I think you're just starting your journey, but as you learn, I think you'll see people like that are helping you. And then, you know, a few years from now, hopefully you're on the other side and you can start helping other people. I'm getting up there in age, and my kids two of them have graduated college. My third is in her senior year. But my son graduated a couple of years ago he went for engineering initially, it didn't work out. He switched over to business and finance, and he graduated with his degree. And he's like, now what am I going to do? Like, you know, we're trying to figure out like which career path he'd go. I got him Salesforce certified. I told him to get his admin certification. He got a job with a nonprofit. He spent a year there really learning how to deal with data. He was downloading a lot of information, bringing it into Excel, doing financial reporting. And now he switched over to another company as an admin. And he's actually working in the field and kind of leveraging that Salesforce certification along with his business and finance background. And he's doing great. It really changed, you know, when you're looking at somebody coming out of school with a business finance degree, and then you're looking at somebody else that's also got Salesforce, it just separated him from some of the other candidates. So I think it's a great way to kind of enhance whatever skills you already have by bringing that additional experience.
That's an encouraging story. Thank you, Matthew.
Absolutely. I actually had my daughter, who's a senior at Rutgers this year. She's a computer science major. She interned with OwnBackup this summer. So she actually came in and did, you know, 8 to 10 weeks with us. And by the end of that, she was like, I want to go back to school. This is hard. I got to work every day. I don't like getting up in the morning, but she got a little taste of what it's going to be like when she graduates this spring. But she was encouraged. She wants to go down that developer path, and she got to see, you know, inside of a company kind of what opportunities would be available for her.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. My kids are at the age right now where if it's not revolving around Minecraft or Roblox, they don't want anything to do with it. So maybe in a few years I can.
It's
I can
still tech. It's still tech, Bill. You know, they're learning how to.
Yep.
You do a lot of building, a lot of construction within Minecraft, and those skills can translate. So
We'll have to do a workshop on that one of these office hours here.
absolutely. I see a lot of stuff in the chat, Bill. I haven't really been monitoring it. I don't know if there's anything in there that you want to go over, or I'll continue on if you want.
Let's take a look here. I did have one question that I wanted to ask. As far as the OwnBackup, if somebody was interested in one of these features that you were walking through here, do you purchase OwnBackup, or can you do kind of an a la carte thing where you say we really have this need for the Sandbox data seeding? Can a person purchase just that, or is it they have to purchase the whole suite of tools?
No, that's a good question. We do have separate features. The nice thing is you just go to ownbackup.com. You can start a trial yourself. So if you wanted to do a 2-week trial, similar to what you were talking about with Salesforce, you know, you can always spin up your own developer org. But the nice thing about Salesforce is that never expires. You own that developer org for as long as you want. Ours is a 2-week trial where you can just evaluate the solution and kind of look at it, you know, versus your environment. If you want help, you know, our support team will walk you through, answer any questions and stuff like that. But everything that I'm showing you is individual features, and you kind of purchase anything a la carte. That's a good question.
Great. That's awesome. I just read through the comments in the chat. I don't think that there was any other questions there. How about just in the group? Any other questions you wanted to ask?
Yeah, what was interesting, Bill, I was actually, I as a user group leader, I got invited to Dreamforce this year, which was, I didn't expect. It was so small. I mean, there was only 500 of us that went out to Dreamforce. And then I think there was like 500 Salesforce employees. So it was like 1,000 people at Dreamforce, which is normally 170,000. So it was a little strange to be, in a group that small. But when I was out there, I was talking to, because I'm in the user group community, I was talking to some of the people at Salesforce that run the different user groups, and they were talking about military spouses. And they were saying that, that's a challenge a lot of times, because with the military, you move around so much. Collazo, can you go on mute, or is that okay? Because you move around so much that it's hard sometimes to land a job and keep a job if you're, moving every year, every 2 years. And they were saying, they were kind of approaching us and saying, is this a program we'd want to get involved with, which we're trying to get OwnBackup involved now in working with military spouses. But you think about the Salesforce skills that you acquire if you get into, admin, you get into development, you get into, architecture, anything like that. It's awesome. But those skills really translate. And a lot of times the jobs are remote. We went through so much change in the last 2 years, working from home, being able to have these skills where you can work from anywhere, basically log into a sales environment. And even if you change locations, a lot of times the companies will support remote workers. So I thought that was interesting. And that's, a topic we're trying to explore. OwnBackup traditionally has wanted to hire people in New Jersey, but we are actually expanding now, and we have people all over the country.
That's great to hear. Have you looked at any of the Hiring Our Heroes program that the Salesforce Fellowship through Hiring Our Heroes?
No, like I said, we just talked to him at a Dreamforce, and I'm starting to get in to see what's available.
Yeah.
So if you want to share anything with me, absolutely, I'd love to look at it.
Definitely, I'll connect with you offline.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions?
I'll share one other. Yeah, I was going to share one other solution with Bill, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
We recently acquired another product. There's a company called RevCult that's been on the App Exchange for a while. We thought it was a very complementary solution to ours. What's interesting about the RevCult solution, they have something called Cloud Security Cockpit. So it's an application that we're kind of bringing in with OwnBackup and trying to use together. But what's interesting about this application is that it's looking at the data in your Salesforce environment. We work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, healthcare, financial firms, banks, and obviously there's a lot of interesting information in your Salesforce environment. But if you think about it from an admin perspective, it's tough to kind of track all the activity that you have there. When you're looking at the data protection, you can actually go in and see what fields you have, what objects, and set sensitivity levels. So if there's sensitive information in there, if you were in Salesforce and you wanted to change this account number, you'd have to go in to setup, go down to the object level, select this field, and then you're going to have to go in and do it field by field, set the sensitivity level. If there's any compliance requirements, you're going to have to categorize that data. A very kind of tedious process. With the RevCult solution, you can actually go in at the object level and you'll see all your fields are listed out. And if you said, I want to see everywhere in my system that we're storing birth date, you can search that down and you can see I have it in the contact record, I have it in the patient information. You're going to be able to see that and then be able to classify that data if it's PII, if it's HIPAA data. So different things like this, it's an interesting tool that'll let companies really run reports and then kind of show them what their data protection plan looks like. If there's any information that's at risk, here's the actions you can take. So it gives them a plan and allows them to kind of review that data over time, what the data is and who can access that data. So I think it's kind of interesting because you think about all the information that's in a Salesforce environment, you're going to want to know if any of that data is at risk.
Nice. Now I do see a question in the chat.
Sure.
Does that work for other cloud solutions such as Box, Teams, and SharePoint? I ask because currently an IT consultant that sells those cloud solutions, but not Salesforce yet.
Yeah, so that's where we're headed. We just acquired this package from RevCult, and it is Salesforce specific today, but we are looking to expand that to other clouds and actually be able to offer this protection for different platforms. So appreciate that. We'll get there. We're not there yet.
Just maybe one follow-up question to that one. For the other tools that you mentioned for the data backup and even for metadata type backups,
Right.
do you support any of the other kind of clouds that are kind of surrounding Salesforce, like Marketing Cloud or Pardot or even Slack now, the data that is stored and the metadata stored in those systems?
So we're researching whether it makes sense to back up Slack. I think Slack does have some native solutions that'll protect that information. Marketing Cloud is a challenge. We attempted to do Marketing Cloud maybe 2.5 years ago. But the problem is that they acquired that product. It used to be ExactTarget, I believe, right? They acquired that and it wasn't built natively on the Salesforce platform. So a lot of that data does exist outside of Salesforce in SQL Server. And their APIs were just not up to the task. We were trying to back up an entire Marketing Cloud instance and we were hitting their APIs and trying to pull down millions of emails. And they were like, whoa, they thought we were going to crash their servers because of the volume and the load that we were putting on their APIs. They couldn't handle it. So I know they're rewriting Marketing Cloud and trying to move it to Microsoft Azure and make it more cloud friendly. And hopefully with that, they'll enhance the APIs. And then we can do it. The interesting thing about our solution is when you first sign up for OwnBackup, you just create an account. And then all you need to do is go in and log into your Salesforce data, metadata, Sandbox metadata. You log in once, you're granting us an OAuth token, and then we're just utilizing the Salesforce APIs. So there is no configuration, there's no setup. It's basically just log in, give us access, and we'll start pulling that data out.
Nice. Somebody has a question. Can you quickly just go through the replicate feature?
Sure. So it's interesting that you see this tab for replicate. This was our original Sandbox seeding tool. What I was showing you earlier is the enhanced Sandbox seeding. So this is actually being supported for existing clients, but we're not going to use it going forward. It was more of a wizard approach where you could select your source environment, the objects you want to replicate. You can filter it down to a subset of data, select which snapshot you want to pull from, set the destination, and then it would move data from one environment to another. So it was kind of the precursor to our enhanced Sandbox seeding that I showed you earlier. That's really been, many more features have been added to it with those templates and the ability to kind of define and reuse. This was more of like a one-off procedure where you had to go step by step to do it. So it is being deprecated and being replaced with the enhanced Sandbox seeding.
I noticed there was another option in there too for the metadata. When you first clicked on that replicate tab, was there a metadata function there?
So again, similar to what I showed you with the restore, you can basically take metadata from one org to another, but it's going to be very limited, like I showed you in the restore. Yep. Where you can go in and select, if you want to take metadata from production and move it down to a Sandbox environment, again, you're going to be limited to these subset of metadata objects.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Any other questions anybody wanted to ask?
So yeah, I wonder, is it making a copy when we replicate?
Is it making a what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Copy?
A copy. Yeah, so what it's doing is when you replicate or use the Sandbox seeding, it is copying the data from one environment to another, but it is creating a brand new record in that new environment. The challenge typically is if you're taking an account from production and moving it to a Sandbox, when it gets moved, it's a brand new record in that Sandbox with a brand new ID. So the challenge is then to all the information that's related to it, whether it's child objects or lookup relationships, when we insert those related records for those objects, we have to point back to the new ID because it gets generated in that new org. So like I said, if you're doing that manually, that's usually where you're using Excel and VLOOKUPs, and it gets pretty complex. We try to automate that and simplify the process for you.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. I guess the one thing I would encourage, Bill, I'm sure you're the same way, reach out to me if you want to go on LinkedIn. I can share my LinkedIn here. I'm happy to make connections with anybody. If you have questions after this, if there's something I can help you with, more than happy to connect with you and assist you on your journey as you're learning about Salesforce. Like I said, a lot of people helped me early on when I was learning, and I appreciate that. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that that might actually be a good segue. Matt, if you don't mind, I'm going to take over sharing for 1 second.
Absolutely.
So what I would suggest is that if you haven't done so already, there is a group that we have on LinkedIn, the Military Trailblazer Office Hours group on LinkedIn. So if you're not a member of this already, go ahead and join this. And Matt, I'll send you an invitation here as well. So that if there are any kind of questions after the call, that we want to continue any part of the conversation, we can do so here. And otherwise, I will stop my share. And I think I just want to say thank you to Matt for joining us today, kind of walking us through the tool, giving us your feedback. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill. Just the opportunity to see Pinocchio was worth it.
Nice. Well, what I'll do is I'm gonna end the call here. I will hang out for a few minutes if anybody has any questions or anything else that you want to walk through, or if you want to chat about anything. But otherwise, I really appreciate everybody joining, and I hope to see you next week when we are having Salesforce MVP Steve Mollis walking us through a workshop. So hope to see you guys there. Otherwise, have a great weekend. All right.